I see you. 3 simple words whispered in the flickering darkness by my best friend's 18-year-old son and the carefully constructed, predictable world I had lived in for 2 decades simply shattered into pieces. Hi, everyone. Before we dive into this incredibly complicated and emotional story, please press 1 in the comments if you've ever felt like a ghost in your own life. This is truly a journey about what happens when someone finally sees you. Let's begin. My name is Ava, and at 49, I felt like my life story had already been written, and the ink was long dry. I was a librarian in a quiet Portland suburb, a role that perfectly suited the person I had become, a keeper of other people's stories, while my own was tucked away on a dusty, forgotten shelf. I had married my college sweetheart, David, raised 2 wonderful daughters who were now off building their own lives, and navigated a quiet, amicable divorce that felt more like a business merger dissolving than a passionate love affair ending. For me, love had been about shared calendars, parent-teacher conferences, and the steady, predictable rhythm of a life built on responsibility. Our marriage didn't die in a fiery argument. It slowly faded in the silence of 1,000 dinners eaten in front of the television, of, "How was your day?" questions answered with a curt, "Fine." We had become excellent roommates, efficient partners in managing a family. I had convinced myself that it was enough, that this stability was the reward for my silent sacrifices. I believed in calm, in the gentle, flowing river of a life well managed. I truly thought I had seen all the twists and turns my path could offer. Nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for that fateful week on the coast. It was a favor for my best friend, Jessica. She and her husband were taking a much-needed anniversary trip to Italy, leaving me in charge of their gorgeous, sprawling house perched on a cliff overlooking the moody Oregon coastline. My duties were simple: water the ferns, keep their old golden retriever, Gus, company, and enjoy the peace. Her son, Liam, who had just turned 18 and graduated high school, was supposed to be on a celebratory trip with friends, so I was promised absolute solitude. Jessica's house was my happy place, all cedar and glass, with windows that stared right into the soul of the Pacific Ocean. The air smelled of salt, damp earth, and the pine trees that clung to the cliffs. The first day was bliss. I took Gus for a long, windswept walk along the beach, feeling the cool mist on my face and the firm sand under my boots. I returned to the empty, silent house feeling energized and wonderfully alone. The silence itself felt like a luxury. A hot shower seemed like the perfect reward. I turned the water on as hot as I could stand it, letting the steam billow around me, fogging the glass and muting the world outside. Tilting my head back, I let the water cascade through my hair, a roar that drowned out the quiet hum of anxiety that had become the background music of my life. For years, I had been Mom, Ava from the library, or David's ex. In that shower, surrounded by steam and silence, I was just me. It was a rare and precious feeling of total privacy. That's why I didn't hear the front door open. I didn't hear the soft thud of a backpack hitting the floor, or the quiet footsteps that followed. I was lost in my own world, reaching for the conditioner when the bathroom door creaked open. I froze, my hand hovering in midair. My heart leaped into my throat. For a split second, I thought I'd imagined it. But then, through the fogged glass of the shower door, I saw a silhouette, tall and lean. "Hello?" I called out, my voice laced with more annoyance than fear. There was a sharp intake of breath, a pause, and then a voice, low and trembling with shock. "Oh God, I'm so sorry. I didn't know anyone was here." It was Liam. Jessica's son. My stomach plummeted to the floor. He was supposed to be in another state. He was standing just on the other side of that translucent glass, a phantom shape in my sanctuary. My mind raced. Humiliation washed over me, hot and swift. Instinctively, I crossed my arms over my chest, a useless gesture, and fumbled for the towel hanging on the hook. "It's okay, Liam," I shouted, trying to project a calmness I didn't feel. Just close the door on your way out." "Oh my God, Ava, I'm so sorry. I swear I didn't." His voice trailed off, followed by the frantic sound of him stumbling away down the hall. I heard his bedroom door click shut. I stood there for a long time, the water still beating down on me, my heart hammering against my ribs. The steam suddenly felt suffocating. I was mortified, of course, rattled, but as the shock began to subside, it left something else in its wake. A strange, unnerving flicker of electricity, a feeling I couldn't name, something I hadn't felt in 20 years, something I knew I had no business feeling at all. When I finally shut off the water and wrapped a towel tightly around myself, my hands were shaking. I got dressed in record time, pulling on an old t-shirt and jeans, my armor against the awkwardness that now filled the house. When I stepped out, Liam was in the kitchen, staring intently into the refrigerator, as if it held the secrets of the universe. His back was to me, his shoulders tense. "I thought you were at the lake with Connor," I said, my voice softer than I intended. He flinched, then slowly turned around, keeping his eyes fixed on the floor. "The trip got canceled," he mumbled. "Connor's dad had a health scare. His mom drove us back this afternoon. I didn't know you were going to be here." The silence that followed was heavy and excruciating. "It's fine, really," I said, trying to break the tension. "Just a surprise, that's all." He finally looked up, and I saw that his face was flushed a deep red. His eyes, a startlingly clear blue I'd never really noticed before, were wide with apology. "You're not mad?" I managed a small smile. "No, not mad. But maybe let's establish a knocking policy from now on." He let out a nervous laugh, and the thick tension in the room thinned just a little. We tried to move on. I decided making dinner would be a good distraction, something normal. I pulled out pasta and a jar of sauce, my hands moving on autopilot. Liam offered to help, and I tasked him with chopping garlic, mostly to give his hands something to do besides fidgeting. As we moved around the kitchen, I kept catching him stealing glances at me when he thought I wasn't looking. They weren't leering or inappropriate, but they were observant, curious, and I was hyper-aware of him in a way I'd never been before. I was aware of his height, the breadth of his shoulders under his t-shirt, the way his voice had deepened since I'd last seen him. He wasn't the lanky kid who used to splash me at pool parties anymore. He was a young man, and the fact that I was noticing these things sent a fresh wave of shame and confusion through me. Before we get to the most intense part of this story, if you're feeling for Ava right now, press 1 in the comments. And if you haven't yet, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss how this ends. We ate dinner in the dining room as twilight bled across the sky, turning the ocean outside from gray to deep violet. I asked him about his plans for college, and he spoke about studying photography with a passion that surprised me. He said he wanted to capture things that people overlooked. He was thoughtful, articulate, and far more mature than I had given him credit for. At one point, our eyes met across the table, and for a beat too long, neither of us looked away. In his gaze, I didn't see embarrassment anymore. I saw something else. An awareness. I looked down at my pasta, my heart doing a slow, heavy tumble in my chest. That night, sleep wouldn't come. I lay in the guest room bed, listening to the house settle around me. The sigh of the wind, the distant crash of waves, the hum of the refrigerator. But mostly, I was listening to the frantic thoughts racing through my own head. What was this feeling? This strange, unsettling pull towards my best friend's son? It was loneliness, I told myself. It was the shock of the incident. It was anything but what it felt like. Some lines I knew should never, ever be blurred. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been irrevocably nudged out of place. The next morning, I found Liam in the kitchen, staring out the window at the morning fog rolling in off the water. He smiled hesitantly when he saw me. "Morning," he said, his voice still rough with sleep. "Morning," I replied, my voice tight. "Didn't sleep much." "Me neither." We stood in a fragile silence, the unspoken events of yesterday hanging between us. Finally, I took a breath. "Liam, about yesterday." He turned to me, his expression earnest. "Ava, I am so sorry. I swear I would never—" "I know," I cut in gently. "I know you didn't mean to. It was just an accident." But was it just an accident, or was it a catalyst? I didn't know what I wanted from the conversation, only that I needed to name the awkwardness to dispel it. Or maybe a small, treacherous part of me just wanted to see if the awareness I'd seen in his eyes last night was still there. Later that afternoon, the fog had thickened, blanketing the coast in a soft gray world of its own. I suggested a walk with Gus, needing to escape the confines of the house. Liam asked if he could join. We walked along the shore, the world reduced to the sand in front of us and the muffled sound of the waves. It felt like we were the only two people left on Earth. "Can I ask you something?" he said, his voice barely a murmur over the wind. "Of course." He hesitated, kicking at a piece of driftwood. "Have you ever done something or felt something that you knew was wrong, but it also felt kind of right?" The question landed in my chest with a physical thud. I stopped walking, my breath catching. I thought of my marriage to David, of all the years I'd spent quietly doing the right thing while feeling a part of myself slowly fade to gray. "That's a very complicated question," I said carefully. "Yeah," he said, looking out at the endless fog. "That's what this feels like. Like I stepped into this gray area without meaning to. But now that I'm here, I can't unsee it." There it was. He was feeling it too. The heat rushed to my face. "Liam," I started, my voice a warning. "I'm not a kid, Ava," he said, turning to me, his gaze intense. "I know you think I am, but I'm not." "You're not a kid," I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. "That's part of the problem." "Then what is it?" he pressed, his eyes searching mine. "It's everything," I said, the words tumbling out. "It's your mom. It's my age. It's this house. It's impossible." "Age is just a number," he said softly. "It doesn't change what a person feels." For the first time, I didn't argue. I didn't lecture him about boundaries or consequences, because a deep, buried part of me, a part that had been silent for years, wanted to believe he was right. That night, the universe seemed to conspire against us. A summer storm rolled in, and with a crack of thunder, the power went out. The house plunged into a sudden, profound darkness and silence. A moment later, Liam appeared with two battery-powered lanterns, their soft, golden glow pushing back the shadows. We ended up on the living room couch, the lantern on the coffee table casting flickering light on our faces. The storm outside and the darkness inside created a strange, forced intimacy. "Can I ask you something else?" Liam said, his voice quiet beside me. I nodded, my heart starting to beat a little faster. Why do you look so sad sometimes? He asked. When you think no one's looking. The question blindsided me. No one had ever asked me that. Not my friends, not my daughters, not even my husband of 25 years. I stared into the flickering light, a lump forming in my throat. I guess, I began, the words feeling rusty. For years, my role was to be needed. As a mother, a wife, a friend. You spend so long being the responsible one, the steady one, and somewhere along the way, you stop being wanted. You just become part of the scenery. The last part just slipped out, a raw, painful truth I hadn't even admitted to myself. Liam was silent for a moment. Then he said the words that changed everything. His voice was soft, but it landed with the force of a tidal wave. I see you. It wasn't a pickup line. It wasn't seductive. It was a simple statement of fact, but it struck that hollow, lonely place deep inside me that had been aching for years. Tears pricked my eyes. I looked at him, at his earnest, hopeful face, and saw an understanding there that defied his age. He saw past the librarian, past the mom, past the divorcee. He saw me. Liam, we can't, I whispered, the words a desperate plea. I know, he said, his voice full of a regret that mirrored my own. I don't want you to feel invisible. We sat there, inches apart, caught in the quiet storm of our own making. Without thinking, my hand moved, my fingers brushing against his for a fraction of a second. It was meant to be a thank you, a goodbye, but the jolt of electricity that shot up my arm was undeniable, terrifying, and wonderful. I pulled my hand back as if I'd been burned and stood up abruptly. I should get to bed, I said, my voice strained. Good night, Ava, he said, my name on his lips sounding different than it ever had before. It sounded like a connection. The next morning, the air was thick with the weight of our final goodbye. We both knew it. We sat at the kitchen table, the silence stretching between us. I know this can't last, he said finally, looking at me with an old soul's eyes. I'm not naive, but I'll never forget this. What you gave me. I didn't give you anything, I choked out. You gave me a real moment, he insisted. You made me feel seen too. I knew then what I had to do. You have your entire life ahead of you, Liam, I said, finding my strength. You need to experience it with people who can walk beside you without looking over their shoulder. It's my job as the adult to protect this line. Even if I came too close to crossing it. Jessica was due back the next day. That evening I packed my bag. I wrote a short note on a piece of paper and slipped it under his bedroom door. It read, "Some moments are meant to be memories, not destinations. Thank you for seeing me. Be good to yourself, Liam." I left before the sun came up, giving Gus a final scratch behind the ears and locking the door behind me. Driving home, watching the misty Oregon landscape blur past, I felt a profound sense of both loss and discovery. Nothing had happened, and yet everything had. That week, that boy, that impossible connection hadn't been a mistake. It was a wake-up call. He didn't just see me. He showed me the woman I had allowed to become invisible. The one who loved walking in the fog, who could be moved to tears by a kind word, who was still alive and capable of feeling something powerful. I wasn't going to chase a reckless fantasy, but I was done living in the quiet, gray pages of my past. Life isn't just about keeping things in order. Sometimes it's about having the courage to acknowledge an unexpected moment that shows you what you've been missing, and then walking forward from it, not with shame, but with a fuller, wiser heart. What an incredible story of rediscovery. What did you take away from this? Press 1 if you believe Ava made the right choice for her future. And please subscribe to Hidden Love Stories for more powerful tales that explore the hidden corners of the human heart.